okay.
Hi, our picture has vanished, ourselves, our image of ourselves.
We can still see you. Is your Zoom maximized? You see the full screen?
Yes, we're on full screen.
What is in the picture?
What is in the picture? You.
Okay.
And the time review, Hosey Mitchell, Brian Wheeler, Reed Broadhead.
But you're just not seeing yourself.
Correct.
Well, you look
Keith
fine.
Sorry?
You look just fine.
Ah,
Looking good.
It's fine.
all
It's
right.
fine.
We'll do
There's Keith Woodard. Hello, Keith.
Jose, how you doing?
Oh, life is good. It looks like Reed is on, but I don't see Reed.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, Justin. Jen.
These are all the board people, I think.
Whoops, I renamed the wrong Keith Woodard.
Jen, hello. Are you there?
Hello.
Hey, you are there. Good to see you.
Well, I was renamed Reed Broadhead, and I didn't want to mislead the public. Nice to see you.
Yeah, you as well. So I get to be the neophyte. So you get
That's right. That's our running joke.
you get to show me the ropes.
But I was demoted to alternate.
Oh
So I don't know if an alternate can show a neophyte anything.
no. You've been showing me stuff from day one.
And as folks are getting settled, just wanted to let you know the meeting is live on the city's streaming channels, including Facebook.
And we'll start behaving.
Good luck with that.
You're the one with the rowdy crew.
Oh, shoot, tell me about it. Never a dull meeting.
some control here that just not able to access.
Reed, can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you now.
Great.
There he is. Hello, Reed.
Hi, Reed.
Hello. Hello. How's it going? Just working out. Can you hear me okay?
A little bit of an echo.
A little bit of an echo. My internet.
You got a little bit of a matrix thing going on too.
I'll try not to move. I won't move at all.
Good luck with that.
My computer works fine until I'm required to get online.
Would it help if we all muted?
No. Is that the problem?
Usually not.
Is it okay now?
That sounds fine.
Okay. So how many BZA members do we have thus far? I see 2.
I think we've got 3, don't
I
we?
think
We
there's
got
three.
Justin, we got
Justin.
Jim,
There's
we
4.
got me.
We've got all 4, Reed.
Yep, 4 now. Okay. Okay, great.
Three for quorum, right? So we're good.
Yep, 3. We do have 4 present.
Very good.
So the chair emailed me this morning, or I guess this afternoon, informing me that he was going to be unable to join us. So we have all 4 members present. A quorum is 3 people, so we are able to hold the meeting. For voting purposes, the applicant has to receive 3 votes in favor of the variance or appeal in order for it to carry forward. So today, Mr. Ritter and Mr. Mitchell will be co-chairing the meeting. Kevin O'Halloran is the Board of Zoning Appeal. So I've asked Mr. Mitchell, with his experience with the Planning Commission, to help us out, as well as Mr. Ritter, who is the most senior member of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And I am happy to defer to Mr. Mitter.
So
This
with
is
that,
my first meeting, so I'll let Mr. Mitter lead this.
Sounds good.
Okay, great.
Reed, do you want to wait a little longer? Your bandwidth is a little low, by the way. Are you able to, you're kind of blurry. I don't know. Is everyone else having the same?
I'm
Yeah.
seeing the same thing. Yep.
Okay, hold on a minute. All right, is that better?
I think we're gonna have to work with it.
I think so too.
Yeah, let's get rolling.
Mr. Chairman, I'll be turning off my video, but if you need assistance with a timer or anything else, just let me know.
Okay, Brian, thank you. So let's call this meeting to order. Again, my name is Justin Ritter, senior member of the BZA. And Reed, correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm going to start with BZA 20-12-001. The applicant is Seaville Business Park LLC. Reed, can we start with the staff report, please?
Looks like Reed disappeared. Where'd he go? We lost him. He dropped.
Justin, bear with me one moment. I'm going to find out what's going on. I'm going to see if I can get him.
That's fine. I mean, maybe just ask Reed to move closer to.
He's back.
Wi-Fi.
He's back.
Okay, how's that? Is that a lot better?
This is much better.
Sorry about that. I have 2 hotspots and I was on the wrong one.
You're good now. Reed, did you hear me or were you out?
I was out.
I just called to order.
Okay.
We're starting with BZA 20-12-001, and I'm asking now if you could please give your city staff report.
Great, thank you. All right, so the location of this request is at 1223/25 Harris Street. The applicant is Chris Virgilio on behalf of Seaville Business Park LLC, which is the owner. The property is zoned industrial corridor, and the owner is requesting relief from section 34-457B5, which states that properties located within the IC zoning district shall have a maximum front yard setback of 20 feet. The subject properties, as I mentioned, are in the IC corridor district and have double frontage on Harris Street and Allied Street. There's an existing stream culvert and an associated easement within the setback area on the Allied Street side of the property. Utilities associated with the project that could normally be installed within this setback area will now need to be installed behind the stream culvert, requiring a greater setback. And this setback, according to the applicant, would now need to be up to 35 feet from the street.
Reed, are you looking at your staff report? Can you share your screen and show us? Maybe it'll help everyone better
Sure.
understand. what you're
No
saying.
problem. Does everyone have their staff reports that I provided?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so we are going to be, let me just share my screen here.
Read, if it's helpful, my presentation, I have a slide on this. So if
That'd
you
be,
want-
yeah, that'd be great, Chris. Let me just finish up the little,
Yep.
Yeah, it's just what the applicant provided me with was a drawing showing where the culvert is. And basically, all I wanted to say is that we are in support of this variance. However, we would potentially advise the applicant that they may want to wait until the site plan process to actually know what the city would require. So that there is that option to defer if you feel, we might run into some problems in the future where you might need like a 40-foot setback, or maybe you might only need a 30-foot setback. So we just wanted to state that, but this is a very common thing to find is, when you start digging up, you find that there's obligations to meet certain easements, and this is not uncommon. So we would be in favor of this variance. And that's my report for this one. It's pretty short. I'd be happy to answer any questions if you have them. As I mentioned, there's just the one, I provided just one sheet of showing where the culvert is that the applicant provided to me, but I didn't think that I wasn't sure how much they actually need. And I think the applicant will be able to provide a lot more better resources on this than I can.
Question for you, Reed, is do you know if the applicant is generally agreeable to deferring until a final site plan approval, or is that currently unknown?
We haven't talked about it since I sent him the staff report. So we didn't talk specifically to that.
Okay. Any other questions, fellow board members, for the staff? Hearing none, let's open this application to public comment. And let's set a I think we can set this to, is the applicant Chris? Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, Chris, do you think 5 minutes would be enough for you? I'd like to keep it short if possible. It sounds like, would you want more time than that? Can we do
That's-
5?
That's plenty.
Okay, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Wonderful. Virtually.
You all see my screen?
Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
great. So yeah, like Reed said, this is pretty straightforward, and feel free to interrupt me. I don't have a long presentation here. Just a couple things I wanted to point out. I have a site or our site survey here, and you can see the bold line is the outline of the building here. You can see Allied Street here, and this is a private driveway. The area I've highlighted in blue is an existing stream that was buried underground a long time ago in a concrete culvert. So it's impossible, next to impossible to move. It's bordered on we have it's an adjacent building over here. It's bordered on Allied Street in this private drive, and our future building would be on the other side. So there's really nowhere else for the stream to be relocated. So we really have no choice but to push the building back further from the street. And Reed's right. Right now we're calculating that at about 32, 33 feet. There isn't, the width of the culvert is about 6 feet. We don't know, there's not a record of an existing easement, so we're not sure how much this utility department would ask for as far as an easement. We believe it's 10 feet. I know Reed mentioned deferring to the site plan process. My only concern with that is there's a lot of work and time and effort that goes into getting these site plans put together and approved, and we would like some level of assurance that we're allowed to exceed that 20-foot maximum setback before we get into the site plan process. So maybe there's if you all decide, maybe there's some language that would give us approval to exceed the setback, and some flexibility in the exact figure. If it's a little bit more or less than the 35 feet, maybe there's flexibility that can be put into the variance language for that. So that's pretty much it.
Thank you, Chris. Just one question I have is, why do you think the BZA is the appropriate entity to decide this now, other than we can decide it now as compared to community development for the site plan?
Yeah, I guess so. We would, like I said, it's helpful to have some assurance before we, go through the site plan process that, this would be allowed, rather than going through that process and then being told it's, for some reason we're not allowed. There's a lot of design work that goes into, the site plan, as well as, sometimes the actual building design happening concurrently with the site plan. So, at that point, the wheels are in motion, and, we'd like to get some assurances before there's a lot of, momentum and time and effort spent on this project that, that this is okay.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but wouldn't they be more appropriate of a body to determine engineering appropriateness and things like that, like more scientific things that maybe us as laypersons on the board wouldn't understand or give the same time and attention to?
Right. That's true. Yeah. That's what I was saying. Maybe we could, if this board could approve the concept of exceeding the 20 foot maximum setback, and leave the exact figure up to, the engineers in the, during the site plan process.
Any other questions?
Have you had any conversations with NDS staff about the setback, either now that you're have more awareness of the spatial requirements vis-a-vis existing conditions, or at the time of the SUP application?
No, not regarding the setback or the stream culvert.
So we can feel confident that there were not any discouragements about changing the setback for this project that staff articulated to you?
That is correct. I will say we do show the, there wasn't conversation surrounding the setback specifics, but we did show the building setback off Allied Street, similar to where it's shown in the sketch I just showed you when we presented for the SUP approval. So.
Reed, when you get if we were to say the variance is good, and I guess the request is 35 feet, so we say that works, but they come back a couple months later and need 40 feet, so they need 5 additional feet. Is that just they go through the exact same process again to get here?
Yeah, I mean, they can come back to you, or I mean, I guess we would come back to you as a formality. I mean, if we determine that they can't accomplish what they need because the city is requiring them to be back a certain amount of distance, we don't want to take away those property rights.
Yeah.
No, I don't see why that would be a problem. I mean, like I said, this is not uncommon. We dealt with it, for instance, over in Barracks Road. There's a big culvert underground, and that's why like Chipotle is set back so far from Emmett Street. If you can visualize that, because there's a giant culvert under the ground and it'd be impossible to move it. So it does come up, so I guess that's the reason I would say maybe not to lock it in is that what if they do need 40 feet, then it would just kind of, the formality would be, hey, we got to come in here to the BZA and appeal or modify the variance that was already requested. And it's just a little more of a step that they have to take.
So how unusual would it be to allow them a variance up to 40 feet at this meeting? Is that an unusual thing? I mean, do we do that?
The variance, this is Craig. The variance condition could be set to allow them for up to 40 feet within the review of the site plan process. You can lock it into, what is an appropriate amount. They may not know right now. They know they need up to 40, but you can put that capper on there, what works upwards of 40 feet. You could do a conditional like that.
So Jen, do you think that's a reasonable thing to do?
I think if we're going to grant this, that we do it conditionally, and we say that we would approve beyond the 20 feet, subject to the discretion of the community development reviewing the site plan. And I think leave it up to them. That way it doesn't have to come back to us if we all approve.
Right, because I'm sure the applicant doesn't want to they don't want to go back too far, because all of a sudden it starts eating into their project. I mean, they certainly want to be as close as they possibly can to that easement. They don't want to take more than they need to.
Yeah. So with that, are there any other than describing how we're going to make a motion here, are there any other substantive comments for Chris at this point?
I have another question. With the additional 15 plus or minus feet, and I know you haven't advanced to the site plan stage at this point, how would you envision using the additional frontage?
We envision that being a patio, perhaps a planter area for people, people to use, public area. We can't do much with it. They'll only let you put certain things on top of utilities and streams in case you have to tear them up in the future. So, and easements. So, but it's just a type of common area.
Is there any likelihood that this would be an uninterrupted sea of asphalt of parking?
I don't believe it would be parking. No.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant? Hearing none, we will close the public comment portion of this meeting, and we will deliberate amongst each other now, board members. I mean, I guess I'll just kick it off since I'm talking now. I'm in favor of voting to approve the variance request, subject to the actual amount of footage of the variance to be determined by community development on the site, on the final as approved site plan.
There's discussion at all. Happy to hear it, but I would second that motion.
And I am good with that as well.
Okay.
And I have no problem with doing this either.
Okay.
Mr. Ritter, Mr. Fabio, again, please just be clear in whoever proposed the motion.
Sure.
Let us state the city's site plan process or something that specifically calls out the entirety of the site plan process, so there's no confusion, as community development is also not a current city phraseology. So just the entirety of the site plan process, just to be clear in your motion.
What's the appropriate body that approves the site plan?
Services.
I mean, formerly it was Neighborhood Development Services, but with the splitting of engineering, might just state it as the city's site plan process would probably be the clearest, cleanest way to do.
Okay.
And I'd like to ask staff if it would be appropriate to add a condition that nothing in the granting of this variance would be construed as changing the other conditions of the SUP. Because I would be concerned about this taking precedence over the SUP, other than the fact that it needs to be moved back on the property.
Okay.
So I would make that as a friendly amendment to the motion on the floor.
So what is the motion?
The motion is that this is conditional on not changing any of the other requirements of the SUP.
Yeah, I got the amendment. What is the original motion? We haven't really crafted that just yet.
Hold on, I'm working on it over here.
Okay.
You can also just refer to the last page of the staff report. It gives the approval. I've outlined that I move to grant the variance as requested in the application based on finding the applicant established and granted of the variance would alleviate the hardship due to a physical condition relating to the property or improvements thereon at the time of the effective date of the ordinance. I mean, this is the general one that the city attorney feels that would be sufficient, that they meet the hardship factors detailed in the staff report.
And then we need to make the reference to the city engineers and the utilities organization approving the site plan
That's fine.
based on the based on
approval
necessary setback.
I believe it would be motion to approve the variance request of the 20-foot setback, which shall be subject to such limitations as conclusively determined by the city's site plan process, and also subject to no additional changes to the current special use permit. Did I get that right, Genevieve?
Yes.
Okay. Do I have a second?
Second.
And Mr. Chairman, I don't mean to interrupt your
No,
flow.
That's fine.
It's been a while since I've been at a BZA meeting. I just want to make sure you don't need to open it up to public comment. We do have a small audience.
We did already.
It's
Do we
fine.
need to ask anyone to raise their hands if they want to speak?
Yeah. Does anyone want to raise their hand and comment to this? Seeing none, and having made the motion and seconded the motion, all those in favor? Aye.
Don't we need to go by name?
Sure. Mr.
on a
Mitchell,
Virtual meeting?
Yes.
Ms. Keller,
Yes.
Mr. Barnhart,
Yes.
Mr. Ritter.
Yes.
Okay. Motion passes 4-0 for that one. So I will move on. The same applicant is requesting a second variance. This is the more of the meat of this meeting. So I will go ahead and move on to BZA 20-12-002. The applicant.
Mr. Ritter,
Yes.
do we need to officially close that, Mr. Broadhead, and open the next hearing?
No, but that's what we're doing right now. The motion passed for BZA 20-12-001. Are you happy with that, Mr. Ritter?
I'm happy with that. And I'm just wondering if O2 is going to be the most substantive item and O3 is not, should we do O3 now so the folks that are waiting can be done with it? And
I'm fine with that. It's up to you. It's up to you to decide how you want to do it.
does any board member have an objection to that?
No, I think it's a good idea.
Okay, thank you, Addison. So hearing no objection, let's jump to BZA 20-12-03 applicant Mrs. Andrea
Weeder.
Weeder.
Okay. Great. All right, the location of this property in question is 2333 Highland Avenue. The applicant are Andrea and Lawrence Weeder. They are the adjacent property owners, and they actually reside next at 2331 Highland Avenue. The property is zoned single family, small lot. The applicant is appealing a content of an email, the exchange that I had with her regarding a handicap ramp that was recently constructed at the 2333 Highland Avenue address. Section 34-1101B5 states that handicap ramps meeting ADA standards may encroach into a required yard. The required property setback in the R1S neighborhood is 5 feet on the sides. There's several appurtenances that the city allows to construct within this 5-foot setback, including HVAC units, fences, roof overhangs of no more than 1 foot, window wells, etc. Porches and decks and stairs must meet the required setback. However, a handicap ramp meeting ADA standards can encroach into any required yard. This is a brand new home that was recently constructed at this address. And the builder constructed an ADA ramp without approval from staff. We gave them a stop work order, and they were required to submit a building permit showing that it in fact met ADA standards, which is simply width and also rise over run standards. I approved it because that's what the code said I was required to do. It was also approved by the building department. The applicant objects to the determination that this should be located within the side yard setback. The home was designed and constructed with a door located on that side of the home, but without a means to allow a person to exit the home in this location. Also, there's no one in this home that is handicapped, and the applicant feels that the property owner is using a loophole to usurp the required side yard setback regulation. And so I will accept any questions if the board has any for me.
Just so that I'm clear, the ramp, it exceeds beyond the 5-foot step back, or does it not?
It is into the required 5-foot setback. It is currently about 1 or 2 inches from the property line.
Not true.
Right, so
That's
it
not,
is.
Well, wait, I'm
Wait,
sorry.
like,
Wait till the public comment, Ms. Weeder.
So it's,
Okay.
it's it does not cross the property line. It's in,
Well-
based on your facts, it's inside the property line.
Based on the information that I was provided with from the survey submitted with the building permit, it is pretty much right up to the property line.
And the ADA guidelines allow them to build right up to the property line.
The
The
ADA
ordinance.
guidelines state, or this section of the code states that any ramp meeting ADA regulations can encroach into any required yard.
Are we talking, is that city code you're citing?
That is probably adopted from the state or the federal, but that's what this section of the zoning ordinance states.
Did we do anything to verify that the ramp does meet ADA guidelines?
Yes, they had to apply for a building permit and submit plans, which the building official approved after the fact, because they didn't put the ramp on the original building plans that was submitted with the home. It wasn't until the applicant called me to state a complaint, and we investigated, put a stop work order on the ramp, required them to submit the required plans. They had to pay double permit fees, and then it was determined that they met all the guidelines for the building code. And for me, it was just simply, I didn't really have a foot to stand on, because this section of the code says it can encroach into any required yard. And that's why I signed off on it.
And Reed, just so we understand, so it's federal code that preempts.
I'm not sure. We get everything in our ordinance is adopted from the state. So I'm not sure if this is a state or a federal code.
But the city.
But anything in the zoning ordinance, we're not allowed to adopt anything that's not in the state law.
Understood. Okay, thank you.
I have a question, Reed, about how the side door was approved with the building code with no means of egress.
I don't know. I'm not the building. I don't review on that fact. For me, I probably didn't see it, because when I look at building permits for zoning purposes, I'm not really looking at the actual structural plans and building plans. I'm more looking to make sure it meets required setbacks, height, and that kind of thing. Not really how they're planning on constructing it, or the flow of the property, or how it's laid out.
So wouldn't the building have had to be inspected to see that it was in compliance with the building code?
Yeah, sure. They did that, but I'm not, I don't.
Was the door added after the inspection? I mean, I can't understand why it would have been approved without a means of egress.
They don't, I think for the building, they only come out at certain times. They come out, when it's roughed in before they put the drywall in. They're not coming in and looking at every little thing. So, and also the building inspector is not the zoning person. So
Right.
in their mind, they probably feel that stairs could be added at a later date and not know that could potentially conflict with the zoning ordinance.
It just seems unusual to me that it could have been occupied without a means of egress once the door was put in the location.
Right, and it didn't have final, I don't know, and I think obviously the applicant could shed more light, but this has been going on for a couple months now, so it was being built before the home was occupied. It's not, it was the ADA ramp wasn't added after the home was already occupied. It was still during construction. So, and they started building the ramp, and the inspector didn't know. So they went out and seeing that the ramp didn't have a building permit, that's when they gave them the stop work order.
And by the way, the ramp is not complete. They're still building the ramp.
Yep.
Okay.
Ms. Keller, Mr. Fabio, point of clarity, if the exit is not a required means of egress per code, if there was another egress within that area, there is not a requirement for an egress stair or a ramp in that location by building code unless it is a required exit. So that door would not have been a problem as long as it was safely locked and able to open. They would not have had an issue with it.
As long as there was another means.
Correct.
Okay, thank you for clarifying that. That was the hang up
Yeah,
for me.
thank you, Craig.
Okay. Any other questions for staff?
Hmm.
Hearing none. Looks like Mr. Mitchell might have one.
I'm good. I'm good.
Okay,
Thanks.
hearing none, we're going to open up this portion of the hearing to the public, and we'll start with the applicant.
Hello.
Hi, can we allot 5 minutes? Is that enough time for you
That'd
today?
be fine. Yep.
Thank you. 5 minutes. Mr. Timer View. You can
Sounds
start.
good.
Miss Weeder, if you could state your name and address for the record, please, before you begin.
Certainly. My name is Andrea K. Weeder, and I live at 2331 Highland Avenue, Charlottesville. My husband and I have been living here in this house for almost 20 years. And the reason that we have brought this to the zoning board is because we feel that this 5-foot setback between properties is a very important area. We observe it on our side. We would like the Kingmas to observe it on their side and not usurp it with an unnecessary ramp, which only purpose seems to us to be exiting the door that's on the side that never had an exit. To clarify, this house has an exit in the front, an exit in the back off the deck, and an exit inside the house downstairs to a back patio. A total of 3 exits from this house on the floor on which the door that goes to nowhere is located. Our request is that this unnecessary ramp be removed, that the 3-foot setback be honored, 5-foot setback be honored, as we have been honored on our side. We have honored it on our side, and feel that it is a true encroachment on our own property rights. If you've looked at the images that we sent along of the way this ramp looks, you see that it's in our face all the time. They never see it and they never use it. And I don't know if Reed sent the pictures that I took a few days ago, which show that Mr. Kingma and Mrs. Kingma have decided that that's a good place for them. The ramp is a good place for them to store their garbage cans. And they seem to have taken up the idea that that's a good idea, that they'll just have their garbage cans up there on the ramp. I think I've made myself clear, and if there are any questions, I'm happy to entertain them, and I hope you have seen the pictures of how this thing looks. Thank you.
There is a rack of what looks like wood that's adjacent to the ramp. Is that your rack or is that their rack?
Rack of wood?
A
Well,
rack-
yeah, there's a rack of something.
We have a woodshed on our property.
Or are you
Is that what you're
are you speaking of the wood that leans against the deck over there? Or
What?
Maybe I should have taken a picture when I was over there today, but there was some edifice. It looked like a rack that was holding wood that was adjacent to the ramp.
oh, it's because it's 2 dimensions instead of 3. That you're seeing our woodshed, the end of.
Oh, that is your woodshed.
What?
And that is on your property.
Right. Also, the other thing is that this ramp and deck sit right on the property line. There is not half an inch. They are right there. And the reason we know that is because we decided to go ahead and have our own property resurveyed. So if a person was looking now at the way the landscape looks, they'd see the pink markers, which are our markers. Oh,
Reed is showing.
Yeah, someone showing the picture of the garbage cans. Yep, that's it. And that wood that's leaning there is part of his, I guess, construction project. I don't know what.
So just, and forgive my ignorance here, I'm trying to wrap my head around all this. Just because it's not used now, is it usable for a future owner of the property at another time?
We can't speak to the future.
Well, I know, but is it possible?
You're saying that, is it possible that the people who lived there became disabled and needed a
No.
ramp?
Is it possible that a future owner or a future occupant could use that ramp?
Well, if you allow it to stand,
If you
I
allow it to
suppose it
stand,
could.
anybody could use it. Yes, absolutely. And if you look at the survey that we have submitted with this, the property survey, you would see that what is called a deck and a ramp is what's described there. And if this ramp and deck were evaluated as an uncovered and unenclosed structure, as per zoning ordinance 34-1101B7, it could not be built any closer than 5 feet to the lot line. So if one looked at it as a deck and a ramp instead of an ADA ramp, it wouldn't be permitted by yet another zoning ordinance code.
And if handicap access is required, he has a front door.
He has
a
plenty
very
of
wide
space.
front entrance.
Yeah.
Okay.
Is it a ramp? Or, I mean, is there stairs up to the front door?
Yeah.
There are three steps, I think it is, but you can put a ramp on it. I mean, it's.
What evidence do you have that they don't use this ramp for handicap purposes?
No one living there is handicapped.
Excuse me, we've lived opposite this project for 14 months solid. We have seen everything that's taken place. As you know, we can't go anywhere. A lot of people can't go and can't budge. We've pretty much seen everything from the get-go. We see that Mr. Kingma and Mrs. Kingma are young people, perfectly able, and they have a young daughter.
And a dog.
And a dog, and they all have now, pretty much since August, started living there.
So my issue, and please tell me why I'm wrong, is how can we go around what sounds to be a federal law that this has to be in place? Now, there's some questions that I have that I don't have answers to, and if you do, I'd appreciate them. You know, to have this ramp constructed and to have the right to do this, do you have to have the need for it, like an imminent need at the time to do it, to allow the zoning? I don't know.
In the previous zoning ordinances, it says you must have a need for it in order to build it.
And it doesn't say that anymore in the current one?
Excuse me, I think that this line of questioning, Mr. Chair, would be more appropriate to be directed at our staff, who would have that expertise rather than to ask an applicant for their opinion on the ordinance. I'm
Sure.
a little comfortable with that.
Okay, staff?
I can't speak of what used to be before 2003 because I was not employed with the city at that time. So I don't know what the old ordinance said about whether or not you had to be handicapped to have an ADA ramp. I just wanted to point out, I did receive one other email from Miss Kingma. If you wanted me to share that, I just got it. If this is the time for the public hearing, I can share that with the board. So I'm just opening it up here. Basically, I can read it. It says, thanks for keeping us in the loop with the opportunity to send comments ahead of the BZA meeting. Anyways, our intention from the beginning with both the homes, they built 2 properties. This is the one that they intend to live in. So we've done our best to be open and accommodating to our neighbors and ensure them that we are not a big time builder developer doing a flip. This is our home, and we are disappointed that an accessibility feature allowed by code would cause so much conflict. The larger picture is that we've prioritized accessibility in many ways other than just the ADA ramp entrance, including a roll-in, no-step shower, wide hallways, and a bedroom on the main level, because we believe in offering that level of comfort to family, friends, and guests. Our home meets both the visitability and livability criteria of the Design for Life Seville program, which incentivizes the improvement in question. Ultimately, we think these types of accessibility features are a benefit to the community. So that was received from Ms. Kingma on Tuesday, and I wanted to wait to share it for this public comment section of the meeting.
Any other comments from the public? Hearing none, I will close this portion of the public hearing and we will deliberate amongst ourselves. Board members, anyone want to kick off their initial thoughts and comments?
Yeah, I mean, I can see what the concern is, and I definitely am sympathetic to that. It's like you don't seem to need this thing, and maybe you're just trying to get around something that you weren't allowed to have, and trying to remedy a mistake. I mean, I get all of that, and I'm not sure what the code used to say, but I'm just staring right now, and I keep looking at section 1101B5, and it says handicapped ramps meeting ADA standards may encroach into a required yard, period. If there was some sort of discussion of need, I would be thinking, yes, we have the authority from the zoning code to go along with that there maybe isn't a need here, and maybe you guys have already showed that, but we just don't have that in our code, and I don't think that we can rewrite the code. That's not what our job here is. It's to interpret, and I think it's just as Mr. Broadhead made a reasonable interpretation, and we get to review him on that. And I, for one, at least with some reservation, say I think he's interpreted it properly, and I feel like my hands are tied to interpret it a different way. Perhaps some of the other board members would feel different, but I'm kind of on the idea that this is allowed. It's a loophole, and the code should be changed, if this is a problem. But that's just me.
Any other comments?
It seems to me that the property owner was well within rights to develop the ramp, whether it was needed or not at this particular time, given the way our ordinance is written and interpreted, that a ramp can occupy that space. And I think that we are probably violating privacy concerns even to inquire as to the health and condition of the people living there or their aging requirements. And at times, I know our planning commission has promoted visitability, particularly in the time planning commissioner, and the rec center is named for him. That was very much an encouraged city philosophy. So I would feel very uncomfortable to recommend denying that right to anyone who needed or was looking forward to the future or for other needs to use that requirement. I mean, that possibility to occupy the space with a ramp. It seems that it's legal, and it's unfortunate if other people view it, but property owners have other options that they can employ for screening things that they find objectionable. So I'm prepared to recommend denial.
Mr. Mitchell?
Nothing more to add.
I feel the same way. With that being said, shall we bring this to a motion? And it sounds like the motion would be motion to deny the appeal, the subject appeal, due to the strict construction of the city code. Stated another way, motion to deny, given that the builder was within their rights to build a handicap ramp as built.
Second.
All those in favors, we'll do this one at a time. Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Barnhart,
Yes.
Ms. Keller.
Yes.
I am also a yes. That's a 4-0 denial. And with that, we will close this portion of BZA 20-12-003. We will now, did we lose Genevieve? There she is. Okay, we lost the applicants. We will now move to BZA 20-12-002. And with that, can we please have a staff report read?
You're muted, Reed.
There we go. Now I'm not muted. How about that? I was hoping that you could lip read there. So there is a fair amount of detail, and I'll try not to be too lengthy, but I don't want to miss anything here. So the applicant is Seaville Business Park LLC. Location is 1223 to 25 Harris Street. I believe Mr. Virgilio and Mr. Karaminas and perhaps Mr. Woodard are all applicants. There'll be several people that may or may not want to speak. So a variance has been applied for this property to permit a structure that, I'm sorry, let me start over. Okay, so a variance for the property. The property was granted a special use permit to construct a 70-foot tall structure, but due to a 50-foot drop in elevation on the property, the approved massing in the special use permit cannot be constructed. The BZA is legally authorized to consider a variance of height specified within the zoning regulations for this property. But staff wants to urge that the way the city determines height by looking at the definition of grade in 34-1200 and the provisions of how height is calculated in 34-1100 subsection A should not be looked into. So you do have the right to potentially give them additional height, but we urge you not to rewrite the code for those two sections. This property, as mentioned earlier, is in the industrial corridor, having double frontage on Harris Street and Allied Street. Special use permit SP 19-00010 was granted by Planning Commission and City Council to allow the construction of a structure up to 70 feet in height, which is 6 stories maximum per city code. So to familiarize the board, when we figure out how height is calculated for a building or structure, first you must determine the grade of a property, which is the average level of ground adjacent to the exterior walls of a building. And then section 34-1100 subsection A states that no building or structure, part of the building or structure shall exceed the maximum allowable height permitted in that zoning district, i.e. 70 feet. So there's portions of this building that are in attachment 1 on the north side of the building that will exceed 70 feet. Thus, the applicant is requesting a variance to allow these portions of the structure to exceed the maximal height. it's just portions on the north side. It is an attachment 1. I can share my screen momentarily so the board can see. It is a tricky site because of the 50-foot drop in elevation. If you visited it, you can see it's quite sharp. And so that is my staff report. I'd be happy to answer questions. I know I was stumbling there a little bit, but it is a little tricky. So that's what I have to say.
Oh, I got a question about the legality of this as it relates to modifying the definition of a grade. If you look at the letter that we got from Wooded Properties, in the first paragraph under variance requests, and they talk about the variance and the grade being problematic. Do we need, are we legally able to give this any consideration? Again, look at Keith's letter or his company's letter and read the first paragraph as it relates to what's happening with the grade. Are there any legal gotchas in our agreeing to do this based on the way the request is worded?
Well, I worked on this with the city attorney's office, and they didn't raise any red flags that there was issues with what was being requested. This is not the result of just a random act. We've been working with the developer on trying to make sure that their proposed massing would meet all requirements. And so we've been working together for a while, and I've seen all these drawings, but I wasn't able to conclude that what they were proposing could be built under the definitions that I have in our code of grade and height. And that
I'm sorry, I missed it. You said you were not able to conclude.
I was not able to allow them to construct the project that they want to construct because that north side of the building will be taller than the max allowed height of 70 feet. And so it's just the way, you know, on that side, I guess the way the grade drops, their building is just too tall. And so they're asking for a variance to allow essentially additional height on that side of the property to be able to build what they feel they were given approval to build in their special use permit. So, you know, you've probably seen this massing when they came and got the SUP. But so they got the massing, they've shared the designs, but now when they've gone through the site plan process to get the final okay, it was discovered that that portion is too tall. It's taller than 70 feet. And like I say, I'll share my screen. I know the applicant will highlight the area, but it's on the north side adjacent to the Habitat building. There's a small access road that will be private. So you can't even see it from the street. But that's what they're asking for, is that they can get additional height on that side. But we're not looking, as the city attorney's office and myself are making sure that you don't mess with the grade definition and how we calculate height. And I certainly don't think that they want you to do that as well. They would rather have you allow them to have additional height on that portion of the building as a variance. If this is an exception, this is an exception.
Cool, that's helpful.
Okay.
Reed, this reminds me a bit. Was it the fraternity house case we did a few years ago? Didn't we have a similar question like this?
I think the fraternity was that for underground parking? It was parking in the setback.
But it was a question.
That was a setback issue,
Yeah.
not a height issue.
Yeah.
I think you're thinking of the code building.
The code building, I looked back at that for a reference, and that was not so much height. It was
Facade.
It was for the code said that they had to have a portion of their building could either be between 40 and 45 feet in height for a certain floor. And because the grade stepped up, they wouldn't be able to meet that 40 to 50 foot minimum maximum without having their floor plan be all wonky. And so
It also interfered with the ability to maintain the historic storefront on the downtown mall. They wanted to keep that historic storefront, which did not meet code, which is what they needed to do there.
Yeah, I looked to see if that was a precedence. I certainly was trying to help everyone to make sure there was some sort of precedence there. This section, or this way we measure grade, is new. I believe it's only been in the code for 2 to 3 years. We used to just say that the average height could not be taller than a certain amount, but it was the average. So you could have a really short side or a short wall of the building and then average it with something that perhaps is taller than the maximum. And when you average them out, as long as it's all under the max height, it would be okay. And so the end result, or the unforeseen consequences of that were that you could have portions of the building taller than the max allowable height. So we came up with this new section that said, you still measure the average grade, but then no portion of the building can be taller. But I digress. I think, as I said here, they're just looking for an exception because the site drops 50 feet and they feel like they did their due diligence and got a special use permit. And they were approved 70 feet and they're trying to build that and have run into this one issue on this one side of the building that you can't even see from the street.
And would they be able to return to the planning commission to amend the SUP?
This would be an amendment to this. They wouldn't have to go back to the planning commission.
If they wanted additional height, would they be able to do that? Through an amendment?
I think they're at their, I'd have to look. I feel like they might be at their maximum for a mix because it's a mixed use building. I think they're at
Ms. Keller, Mr. Fabio, I don't believe that there is an option for height reductions in the SUP process any longer. Does that sound correct to you, Mr. Mitchell?
I don't know.
Yeah, I wanted to clarify that.
I think because it's a mixed use structure that there's limitations on how tall they can be.
Any other questions for staff, board members? Hearing none, shall we hear from the applicant? Not sure who wants to go. I'll let either Pete, Anthony, or Keith, or even Chris take the floor.
Okay, thanks, Justin. I'm going to share my screen because we did put together a couple slides just to help out help everybody understand what's going on. Let me try to pull that up here. All right. All right, I will try not to overcomplicate this. Reed did a pretty good job explaining a lot of it, but it is a little complicated. So that's why I put these slides together. And feel free to interrupt me as I go if you have questions. I don't mind. So this is just a site overview. You're probably pretty familiar with the site and location. Just want to highlight a couple things. This building is a part of McIntyre Plaza. And McIntyre Plaza and the Habitat store, which Woodard Properties owns, border this new building and site on 3 sides. There's a building across Harris Street in this sob lot, basically, that are neighboring properties that are not owned by Woodard Properties. And I also wanted to point out, Reed mentioned this what's called the service road here. between our new building that's highlighted in yellow and the Habitat store is a private drive. That's not a public street. So so here we have the footprint of the building highlighted in blue. You can see Harris Street on the south side of the plan here, Allied Street on the right side of the plan, and then the private access road and the Habitat store on the top of the plan. So if you're standing on Harris Street in the area marked as elevation 450, looking down on Allied Street would be 50 feet lower than where you're standing on the sidewalk on Harris Street. And there is somewhat of a grade drop off between Harris Street and the access road to a lesser extent, but it's about 20 feet. So the 50-foot grade drop off and the fact that we have 2 street frontages make the site a very unique situation, unique set of circumstances when it comes to calculating the building height. So this is the building that we put before the SUP process, was reviewed by Planning Commission, City Council, NDS staff. And it's a building that was approved in the SUP process. And I know that building appearance is kind of outside of the purview of, what this board considers, but I just, I bring this up because it's a building that looks and feels like a 6-story building. That's how we designed it. From Harris Street and Allied Street, from the public vantage points, it looks and feels like a 6-story building. And I think that's why, as it went through the SUP approval process, there was very little to no comment and discussion about the building being too tall. So it's unfortunate though, this building, if you apply the strict definition of the height ordinance, it doesn't comply. So these sketches we put together just to show you what would happen if we did apply the strict definition of the height ordinance. The bottom sketch, the top sketch is a 2-dimensional building section. It's the same building that was building design massing that was submitted in the SUP process. The bottom building section is what would happen if we applied the height ordinance. So as Reed explained, the average, and it all ties back into the average grade plane. So you see the grade plane on this site is 425 feet when you average the points around the building. So and because of the 50-foot difference between Harris Street and Allied Street, that creates a situation where you have almost 3 stories of building below the grade plane, which is the point that building height is calculated from. So you have another six stories on top of that. So the result is almost 100-foot tall building on Allied Street. And on Harris Street, it actually takes a building from 6 stories down to 4 stories. So this 50-foot elevation difference is just the height ordinance was not designed to deal with this type of unique situation. And it's creating the building to not meet the intent of the ordinance, which is what we tried to do in our original design that was approved in the SUP process. So we just put together a few 3D renderings, nothing really more to say on this slide, other than you can see the first column is as submitted in the SUP. The second column is what would happen if we apply the strict definition of the height ordinance. So you can see on Allied Street here, it's a 9 or 10-story building, which it wasn't the intent of the code, and you know, I think a lot of people would have a problem if there was a building like that. So in, you know, in conclusion, you know, if we had to, you know, we have this building that the city wants. It seems like a lot of people, you know, like, there's very little public opposition to this building. It's providing, you know, a lot of housing close to the urban core. It's contributing to, you know, we're actually having affordable units in the building, went above and beyond on that account. So, you know, Planning Commission approved this unanimously. City Council approved it. We have, you know, everybody's giving this building the thumbs up, and we can't build it because of this height ordinance. So if we had to try to summarize the hardship that's created, it's that we can't really comply with the intent of the height ordinance, which is to have 6 stories and 70 feet of building on the primary street frontages, and you know, appropriate height and massing, and at the same time comply with the ordinance as it's written. So the variance would allow us to comply with the intent of the height ordinance and have appropriate height and massing, and you know, building everybody wants. So this is, you know, kind of these 2 images. I highlighted the 2 different masses just to show you. Like Reed said, it does get tricky back on the private driveway. So I showed you the mass of the building that's fronts on Harris Street. The height, we're asking that the height be set based on the Harris Street frontage. So that top of building elevation would carry back through to the private drive and the purple mass. And then the blue mass building height would be set off the frontage on Allied Street. And again, that mass would carry on the side, carry through to the side. That height would carry through to the side of the building on the private drive side. So I guess that's it. Keith, Pete, did I miss anything? Do you want to add? Guess not. So.
Yeah, I don't think you missed anything. You know, I think that the issue, as Reed described and you described, is essentially, you know, seeking that variance to allow the 70 feet that's, you know, that is permitted and intended by the ordinance and the special use permit up at Harris Street as well as down at Allied Street, rather than have sort of this disproportionate building where you have you know, essentially a skyscraper on one side and a short building on the other. It's kind of, you know, what Reed had described was the unintended consequence of the prior ordinance. And in this case, it's just because of the unique aspects of this particular property with having 2 frontages and having such a significant drop in grade. We end up again with sort of, I think, what are unintended consequences of both the ordinance and, you know, in trying to comply with the ordinance and the special use permit, we end up, unfortunately, having to have a variance to see through the actual intent of each of those approvals.
Thanks, Pete. Any other public comments? Hearing none, we want to shut down the portion of the public comment and move to the board deliberation portion of this hearing.
Hey, Justin, is it helpful that I leave this slide up, or let's leave the slides up as you're talking
Can you actually go back 2 slides?
here?
Yeah, thank you. Before we dive into the details on this, does anyone have any general feelings towards this of which way they're leaning?
Jen, if you're speaking, we can't hear you. You're muted. You need to unmute.
Yeah, no, okay.
There we go.
I wonder if Reed could clarify the points of his staff report for us again. I'm a little bit confused about what the staff report is recommending, and especially vis-a-vis the comments from the city attorney.
Well, so the city attorney just doesn't, so she wants to make sure that the board knows that we suggest that you do not give a variance mentioning any sort of information dealing with grade or how we measure the height. We don't want to open that can of worms.
We
Rather,
don't want to rewrite the ordinance.
Because that's already been established. Okay.
right. Rather,
Thank you.
the
That's all I need to know. I just needed a clarification about
Okay.
that, because the city did spend substantial time working on that.
Yeah. And,
Yeah, thank
but you know, life would be a lot easier if this was like Kansas and it was a flat gridded city, but we just don't have that reality in Charlottesville. And so we have certain examples like this one where there's means to get a variance if the strict application of the zoning ordinance is unreasonable.
And then, so what is your staff recommendation?
I wouldn't say I have a recommendation either way. I mean, dealing with this project and with the applicant and the fact that it's not as if they woke up one day and said, this is what we want to do. They sought approval and they went through all the channels and they got to the tail end of the project and were emailing with me. And unfortunately, I had to say, no, I don't think that you can build what you just got permission to do. So the fact that they did all their due diligence and they got to the finish line, I would recommend that the BZA grant the variance in this case.
And I agree. My general feeling is that I'm leaning towards recommending approving the variance as is. I mean, due to unique topographical challenges to this property that do not affect others within the general region. This does remind me of the fraternity case in the sense that I know we were dealing with setback issues, but the chief logic to me that I remember is that it didn't harm anyone's, when you look at the fundamental reasons why we have these restrictions in the first place, it's to prevent unreasonable sights, sounds, smells, etc. And here, you know, you're looking at what they have by right looks, if you're standing on Allied Street looking up, looks much more egregious or less aesthetically appealing than what they're proposing. So I actually like what they're proposing, and I'm strongly leaning towards approving the variance on the grounds of which they're requesting, but I can be swayed otherwise. Thoughts?
Well, I agree with you that there is a similarity with the fraternity house in that it had other approvals and then came to the BZA for relief. And I think first let me compliment the applicant on this as being a very good proposal, very good exploration of the issues, and I very much appreciate that. That's very clear. What I think it has in common with the Rugby Road situation and what concerns me is the SUP is a complicated process, and it's a process that looks at the totality of the site and its adjacencies. And even if it was unanimously approved and without substantial opposition, it is a very comprehensive process. And while I had no problem dealing with the first issue of this project to deal with the setback because of the hydrological issues, I am concerned that we start a practice of coming to the BZA for relief from an SUP, which is a special process in the first place, where those issues should be worked out. Grade and topography are known at the time that a request for an increase in height goes through the SUP process. So that's what troubles me about this.
Good point.
I'm,
And that's why I asked Reed if it could go back to the planning commission where it could be looked at holistically. And it's not just the planning commission, an SUP is approved by the council, which is the elected body of the city. So it's not something that is considered lightly, even if there's not much discussion about it. So I'm a little uncomfortable coming to the BZA for relief from an SUP, which was relief from the traditional zoning ordinance in the first place.
Chair, I know the public comment period's over, but may I just make a clarifying point on that?
Please. Please
Thank
do.
you. I just want to make sure everybody understands that what's being proposed is not intended to change the terms of the SUP. I mean, what's being proposed is actually consistent with the SUP in the sense that the SUP allowed, up to 70 feet, 6 stories, and it allowed for a maximum elevation, which you see in that drawing of 510. And so what is being proposed is within the parameters of the approved SUP in the sense that it's the same number of feet and stories and within, under the elevation that was approved. So again, I think what we're dealing with here is just sort of an unintended consequence that wasn't even contemplated at the SUP stage because it hadn't gotten into the detail yet of the following stages in the site plan process. So I just wanted to make clear that, we're not asking to change the special use permit. This is just additional relief that really this body is the one that has to grant in order for the design that was approved by through the SUP in order for that to be allowed to be constructed.
Just to add on to that, Pete, we did the SUP resolution even states that we're allowed to build a building up to 520, an elevation of 520 feet. And I know this sketch shows 510, but we had asked City Council to include the 520-foot elevation. And in case we, run into some design issues where we need, a couple extra feet on a few floors. So we actually did have that discussion with City Council, and they said, going up to that 520-foot elevation was okay, and that's in the resolution.
I do remember this. Well, we chatted about it for quite a bit. I do worry a little bit about the slippery slope that Jen is alluding to, but I think for this this project, a variance is the right thing to do. I would be willing to vote for a variance.
Addison, what do you say?
I'd be willing to vote for the variance too. Topographically being the main reason it is. I'm well aware of that site, very steep. It's the zoning administrator is basically approving it as well, that we've got to, make the variance call. No one's here challenging it from the public. I think all of those things tip me towards approving the variance.
Mr. Chair, I have a question for Mr. Mitchell.
Please.
As you look at this, do you see any considerations that you believe the Planning Commission would want to address because of these changes? Do you see anything that would have changed the conditions that were applied?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Had we known about the challenge that the topography generated regarding the need for additional height, that have been good to known about. But I think we were pretty plussed by the project. I think we would have approved it anyway.
Yeah, I mean, my only concern is I don't want us to start a practice that the BZA is the place to modify an SUP. We truly want it to be unique and a hardship, and I think we are aware of topography is an issue because we occupy the Virginia Piedmont. Yep. That's why we are the Virginia Piedmont, because we have topography, and you expect that developers are well aware of that. But if you don't see anything that you think the planning commission would want to address in a changed SUP, then I can have some comfort in supporting this because I know it's an important project. And many of the adjacencies are in the same ownership.
And the other piece that makes it, that I'm plus by is the additional height is not easily visible. You can't see it unless you're right there on it, looking at it. You know, you won't see it driving by.
And that's the thing for me too.
Yeah.
So with that, I think, are we ready to vote? Any other comments, board members?
No, I appreciate Hosea's comments, and I think that's why it's really valuable to have a sitting member of the planning commission on the BZA.
Well, very good. With that, I will propose a motion to approve the variance request based upon the unique topographical challenges affecting the subject property. Do I have a second?
Second.
And with that, we'll take it to a vote. Mr. Mitchell,
Yes.
Mr. Barnhart,
Yes.
Ms. Keller.
Yes.
I am also in the affirmative. Let the record show the board has approved the subject variance request 4-0.
Thank you all.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for participating.
Thank you.
Anything else, Reed? Are we able to?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can make a motion to adjourn. We don't have any other cases on the agenda for today. We probably, as a board, are going to want to have a work session in the coming year. We have, as you know, you may have caught in my beginning with my bad broadband that Kevin O'Halloran is now done. He's no longer on the board. We did open up the application process for the BZA. I received four applications, 2 from our alternates, and then 2 new people requested that they want to be on the BZA. And that process is completely up to the circuit court judge. So
very good.
He will decide who the future BZA members will be. And then once we have that group together, then I feel we should elect a new chair or appoint a new chair and vice chair and get everyone on the same page, or if we need to have training or what have you, to be a successful board for the coming year.
Reed, thanks for putting all this together today. Yeah. I'm sure it wasn't easy, but it seemed fairly seamless to me once we got going. And I know it was, but yeah, just thank you for that.
Sure.
I like the screen sharing. This is actually kind of nice.
So you know the plan for the city, as far as I know, is that we are going to stay on course of being pretty much virtual until summer, and that is what I'm being told right now. But that certainly could change. You know how things are in flux. I don't have any minutes for us to approve or anything else on the agenda, so it's up to you, Justin, what you want to do.
Motion to adjourn, my friends.
Okay, great.
Do I have a second?
Second.
With that, we will adjourn. See you all next time.
Okay, great. Thanks a lot, everyone.
Good to see everybody.
Thank you. Good to see you.
Bye.